Yeah.
All right. We are live. So, weekly triage, April 18th. How you guys doing?
Doing great. How about
Good.
you?
Good. All right. Let's
Hey,
share
Justin.
this up.
Hey, Fletcher.
Is it some terribly early hour in the morning for you?
No, it's 9 p.m.
Okay, that's not too bad.
No.
Only 9 p.m. That's not that bad. Literally every time I see you, I think it's either 2 a.m. for me or 2 a.m. for you.
Not always, luckily.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's working.
Okay, cool. Nothing like a reboot sometimes.
Nothing like a reboot. Okay. First issue. Explore and run multiple services in one container. So, yeah. Now that we have the multi-service feature in the supervisor, it'll make a little bit of sense if the Docker export allowed you to export multiple services and put them in one container. That's basically what you're asking for here, right, Justin?
That is what I'm asking for, but I have to say, for my particular use case, I found a pretty good pattern that kind of solves this for me. Because mostly I'm bringing up like a backup agent or something that's just going to run as a sidecar process, and I've found that running hab service load for that service in the init hook of the main service is
that's clever.
Pattern.
That is a viciously clever idea.
Yeah, I mean that's a way to do it.
Like that's some hot loading on the fly there. Yeah.
Yeah, because so on the one hand it's a workaround, but on the other hand I think it's a viable pattern because that way we can bring up that sidecar process depending on the config of what the user wants, right?
Like dynamic. Wow, that is super interesting. But yes, I think in the general case, yeah, this was a bit of an oversight and something we need to do. I believe right now that export program takes multiple arguments anyways. It just treats them as like dumb packages though, and assumes the first one is your service. So I think we just need to alter that a bit, and just because I think almost nobody uses the multiple arguments part of it, I think we can just assume each of those are a service, and then call like a service load for each package ident, and I think that would work.
One thing that needs to be adjusted, I couldn't find where the code is, but the entry point, so the init.sh that gets put into the containers. That won't accept like arguments that would start multiple containers. Multiple services.
Yeah,
so
I think the init would just be hab soup run, I think. But yes, we'd need alter that as well.
Yeah, one of the nice things here that this will also provide us is the package exposes, which is how you expose particular exports to the container. They'd all be honored if we supported this as well. The workaround that you have right now, Justin, that wouldn't work.
That's true.
That's like a cool hack though that I won't ever forget now.
Yeah,
so you're totally right. You can just call it anywhere.
Yeah, I think having this support. This isn't just important for Docker, but for any exporter that's going to run multiple services.
Yeah.
We should solve this well.
I think the pattern would be if you have multiple arguments, or we can look at them, but probably just assume they are all services and they're all intended to be loaded.
Yeah, I mean, we have like one package that has the dependencies on everything else that it's going to run, and then we have a command that's in the package that runs hab soup load for all of them, like a post-inst command that you run after you install the thing. So maybe some mix of those patterns would be the right way to do it.
So the scope of this ticket, I believe, is addressing the package exporter. That's right? Okay. Fletcher, should we set this as a help wanted or accepted minor? Or
in a certain way, if we want that full, like the feature parity of what we had before, this might borderline even be a bug for our current one. Or you could view it as a feature of now enabling what we have supported. Because because I don't think we've broken anybody. So yeah, you're probably right. I tend to look at this positively, but this is the probably like in the whole sense of like making that feature totally done as sort of the remedial cleanup stuff. This is probably, I mean, help. It's shellcode, so it's not completely impossible. Like you don't need to start learning Rust just to, if you want to help out with this one. So I think the entry's not totally high.
All right.
But if nobody else does it, we're gonna probably want to do it soon.
All right. All right. Some spring cleaning ticket here. Oh yeah, we chatted about this. This is obvious. We just got to put this in a milestone to get it out of the queue. This is just some the TLDR of this is actually you can't say TLDR and then write this much, Justin.
That's just one. TLDR is just the first line, right?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Right, absolutely. Anyway, this is just some cleanup that Justin wanted to do to the code base. So, right. So service load not picking up environment variables.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was me. Oh wait, no, that wasn't me. Sorry.
But yeah, you probably weren't the only one to have maybe looked at this. Again, this is whether you call this a feature of enabling extra or a bug because it's not exactly the same in a new context. That's why I didn't know which one else to put on. I kind of view it as a feature.
Yeah, it's
or if it's a bug one, it is non-trivial exactly because it involves that service config, which is an interesting character.
Yeah, what's weird is load doesn't set anything in an environment because there's no environment after load, right?
Exactly.
So I think I thought a little bit about this and how we could handle it. One is you can capture on the load command the environment and then write it into the service spec. I don't know what is the most obvious thing though. Like, is that what people really want? Or
well, the other one might be to write an actual like environment.toml, which I thought we did, and turns out we don't currently encode.
yeah,
Because it's sort of held resident in the process's memory, which doesn't really make sense for the manager anymore anyways, or like the supervisor itself.
yeah.
So even the way it behaves now, we probably should be, well, I don't know. Yeah, another way is we could just write it out somewhere and that gets read in.
The other is, do we want to address this? So the way I look at it is that the environment variables you'd use with transient services pretty much. They're things you'd pass to have start because that is how you are choosing to operate things, right? Like, what is this? What is the actual value in setting an environment variable to load that you couldn't just do by writing a user toml or by actually configuring the ring? Like with a persistent service, what is the path that people are normally going to do? I have a feeling that if we wrote these environment variables to a service spec, it's going to be a thing that gets lost. Like, the user is not going to remember that they did that, or they're going to have done it, and then they're going to be wondering where the hell that's coming from. And we are asking people not to go spelunk in the hab service directory or the hab directories at all, right?
It kind of feels like it's transient. It's about as permanent as an environment variable can be, right? So yeah, that does make it interesting.
Well, so from my perspective, having played around with this feature and bringing up like a sidecar process in the init hook, like I explained before, the workaround I have now is that I have like two lines. One will load the service, and the next line will config apply to get the config that I want in there. But even though I've found this, I still sometimes stumble on like trying to debug, like, oh, I'll just put it in the environment variable because it just feels like that's the workflow. That's how you bring up it with hab start, and it feels like it would be the same. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but just that consistency that the user expects, or I do at least, unconsciously.
Something that I had thought that was related to this, and I haven't really floated it before, is Would it be helpful if you had some hab command that actually would just take your toml that you wanted and write it to user config in the right place? So that you just have another way of saying, like, here's config that I want, and it would put it in the right place. It just wouldn't be environment. It wouldn't be at the environment precedence level. It would actually be user toml, which is probably, that's like the permanent solution anyways.
Well, maybe I'm not aware of the user toml feature. Is that another way to specify configuration when starting?
Yeah, so you can basically drop a file. It goes in the service directory for the service you want, I think under files or in the root of that service directory.
It's hab service name user toml.
Okay. And yeah, that will be persistent, and that will be loaded in as well, and that will, like, you know, override defaults from the package.
And that file just has to be present, or is there a way with the CLI to like put it there?
So right now there's no way with the CLI to put it there, and what I've kind of wondered is, I wonder if that might be helpful to people. So all they would need to know is, like, it's for this service, and the right file would be written in the right place.
So could the load command have a like dash config and then pass in the thing that should become the user toml? Is that something that you could do?
Guess I've never really thought about it before, but possibly.
Because I mean, needing to put the file on the file system at the right place, that's very intransparent, let's say.
Yeah, I think we might want to. This is kind of outside the scope of this particular issue. Yeah. We're talking about a new feature-ish, which is a way to abstract. It is actually a way to abstract writing a user toml, which is another way to config on a local, like provide a local configuration of the system to override configuration that comes from the supervisor ring. Like that's actually resonates well with me too.
Yeah, Jamie, you just mentioned earlier that like we don't want people to be mucking around in the /hab directories, and presently, like the only thing that you're supposed to muck around with in that directory is the user toml.
Exactly.
Well, that's what was kind of making me think about that.
Know about it. It's not really well known. So if there were a way to make that easier to work with and make that more transparent, it would probably solve the problem being expressed here in this ticket, and to make it so nobody needs to mess with anything in /.
Yeah, I think the ticket is actually make it possible to set some initial configuration on startup, be it hab start or hab load.
Yeah. Let's talk about this feature, but let's deal with this issue right now. So the environment variables, you can supply them to hab sup run, which is probably the way out of this. I don't think that writing them with the load command is the right thing to do. I think they're going to get lost if they get written to the service spec. And what we really
only because they're cross-process, so we'd have to like somehow capture those in a separate hab process and like shuffle them somewhere into the running supervisor.
Yeah. We should note in the docs though that like when you are setting environment variables, they only work when you are running hab sup run. Or if you run start for the very first time, which also is the same thing as running run.
Like the development workflow one. Yeah.
So now I'll comment this issue and close it out with that data. But now if you guys want to talk about a potential feature right now or go through the rest of the issues, which one? Since we're on the issue, the feature thing already, you want to do that?
I don't know. I'm okay to go through the rest of the features. I just realized I have not told anybody else this.
Yeah.
Maybe I can make an issue that suggests a couple possible approaches just for discussion, and then we can discuss it when it comes up or when somebody decides to do something with it.
Yeah. So
one ticket should be document user toml.
Yeah, if it's, I bet you it is, but it's probably so tucked away. The least we can do is make it way more prominent.
Yeah, it's documented, but it's just like fucked up because it's not part of the normal user experience. Everything else we ask you to use the hab CLI for. Yeah,
and this is out of band.
To know about a random config file that's in a directory that we ask you not to go into in the first place. Yeah. I think it's very clear that like hab config apply is great, and that's how you apply it to the ring. Like hab config local or something like that. That just takes the file and writes it where it needs to go.
Yeah, and our config apply takes the file, or even I think standard in.
Yeah,
Because that's
if
just
we
like a file anyway. So same thing.
do the exact same thing and just say local, and that's the thing that seeds your data. And
okay.
if we had that, then we also solve the problem of people needing to know where to put that file, and we also don't want people to write directly into the hab directories, right? So I think that solves two problems at once.
Yeah, I'll open an issue describing that, and then
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, man. I'm going to close this one out and write the explanation really quick.
what number is this?
This one was 2096.
Okay, I will reference it on the thing that I opened.
Sure thing. All right. Hab substart, my origin, my service does not start correctly. Oh, this is actually, this is true, by the way. I noticed this when I was writing the load command, that we don't validate that input properly. For instance, if you have a leading slash in the service that you're attempting to start, it will assume that the origin is blank and then continue on and just like kind of fuck things up. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I know our clap in the supervisor, I'm pretty sure we have a little helper, like a validator for package idents. It just runs our from string and like explodes on an error.
It's got to be.
I'm almost positive if we don't have it there, we have it in Hab and we can copy paste. It's for these exact things.
Yeah, it's going to be a little more robust, I think. I think it doesn't handle all kinds of bad input.
Well, the good thing is like the fix for that is probably our from string trait implementation anyways.
Yeah.
But it looks like, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but it looks like what he's saying is that when you say Hab, when you load up core Postgres SQL, and then you load up core Postgres SQL 2, and then you later load up Postgres SQL, it loads up Postgres SQL 2. Like it looks like the idents are well formed. Like the way I take this is is a misunderstanding actually of what happens when you call hab start, because it's fundamentally different now. Like, and this has thrown me for a loop too, where you load in a couple services, then you kill the supervisor, then you come back and you load in some other services, and then all these other services get loaded up. Because you forget that now with the multi-service supervisor, when you kill a service, like if you start up that supervisor again, the supervisor remembers the services that were in there last. And that's kind of what I take what's happening here, is that he started those 2 PostgreSQL services, and then he came back later and started up one of them, and he saw that the other one was starting up, and maybe misunderstood that that was supposed to happen. Because it is weird if you're not expecting it. Like I had to make that mental leap the first couple times I ran the supervisor, and even now it throws me for a loop sometimes, but I kind of know what's going on.
Oh, I hear you. So I read that. Yeah.
Are we going to be able to divide? Sorry, I got some accident. The services. If you're running more than one, are we going to be able to support running more than one of the same service in different service groups on the same supervisor?
No. At least not right now with an awful lot of work. The reason is because the service path is absolute and hard-coded, and probably not easy to alter.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, it's not a good idea for us because the service has these defaults, and it's going to bind to some default ports. So that is how we ultimately came to the conclusion that we shouldn't namespace the service directory with the origin as well, since we want people to fork origins and then iterate on the packages in that way. So ideally, yeah, like if you had core Redis, you will only have core Redis on that machine, unless you later want to have Smith Redis, right?
Well, one thing I want to, and I'll probably open an issue for it to put the discussion there. But one thing I'd want to find out is, like, if you have something like a Rails app that has like the app server that's unicorn or whatever, and then it has like delayed job or a worker or rescue or whatever, then like those are the same exact software that they're running, but with slightly different, like basically just a slightly different run hook. And so how do you deal with that? Do you make 2 separate packages? If you want to run those things on the same machine, like,
yeah, you basically make a separate package. You can see actually that pattern here.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going right now with that scaffolding.
Yeah.
Is that you can have like a common set of like the Ruby code base, like the software, but there's nothing to prevent you from making another package that just has the run hooks. It says run that software.
Right.
Okay.
So I tried to popularize this pattern by telling people to stop using the implementation details and the names of their services in Chef. So for instance, you'd have Chef cookbooks, right? Chef cookbook would be like the Nginx cookbook, and then people would make the Nginx roll, and then they'd put that everywhere. And my point was, like, Nginx is in service of some greater application. You need to stop calling it Nginx. You have to identify it for the thing that it is. And that pattern stays true here. So basically what we're going to ask people to do is wrap or fork and the Nginx plan. And then you can see that the builder API proxy,
Right.
the API proxy is just an Nginx server, but
So
because it overrides the defaults that Nginx have set, it makes this safe to run on the machine, and it serves that purpose.
So if I were to run a typical Rails app on Habitat, that had background workers, I would need a minimum of 3 plans. And with scaffolding, they might be really small plans, but right now that's kind of how we're recommending to do it.
Yes.
That may be a way to do it. That's kind of the way I'm tending to, I guess, go right now. There's other ways where you can try to have that one package do more than one thing, but that makes me a little nervous, I guess, as an operator at production. I would really rather see that, there's my Rails app dash jobs running, and a My Rails app dash app or something, rather than a My Rails app, and then I need to look at how it was actually configured to run to know, is that the job service or the app service? So.
Okay.
Yeah, the use case I see there is really just for in a development environment and where somebody doesn't, wants to kind of have a Docker type of a world, but just but not in Docker, where they just want to be able to run like multiple services of the same service just in a development capacity, which is nice, but
Yeah. So I think these are the 3 things that we need to do to ultimately fix this. This is kind of like a bonus round. This was my slight misunderstanding through reading it, but it is actually a problem, is that we don't validate the input well enough.
Yeah.
So we should validate that a package is installed on load command. I think this is appropriate, unless we make load install as well.
It does, well, sort of. It doesn't do it itself. It could, though.
Yeah.
Right now,
We
it's
also
technically the services lifecycle to handle that.
we also
Right,
don't. There's no feedback to the user now on load.
Yeah.
Or on a subsequent start. So if you type in start for the second time or load, I mean, you don't get an error if things go right, but you also don't get any feedback unless you're looking at your other console where the supervisor is actually running.
Yeah. What would you expect to be output?
I would expect it to say something like, such and such a service has been successfully loaded. Maybe even have it give me the PID of the running supervisor.
Cool. Why don't you open up a issue and write that in?
Yeah, well.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. Also, it's not the first time I heard that. I just have never asked somebody, what do you think it should say? So Fletcher, either we validate the package is installed in load or we auto do it for him, right?
Yeah. So right now it's auto doing it, but it means that that's now in the, well, it's probably still technically in the manager's loop.
Yeah, that's the problem.
As it's loading the service. Like, it is ultimately a method on the service that's doing it, but right now, because that's not on its own thread of execution, that's going to block the main thread as we have it right now.
Right, but I think the issue here is that when you call load, it has no type of validation. So
yeah, it's just saying,
that
here's
command,
a bunch of value data. Hopefully, manager, you'll know what to do with it.
Right, and I think that's the problem. Like what we're asking for here is either you validate that's already been installed, or you pull it down first, and then make sure it at least exists. So either we have to move the automatic download to at time of load, or we have to make sure you've already installed it. I'm not sure which is the right approach.
Well, even if we pull it to at this point in time and leave the other one untouched, it'll end up being a no op anyways. So, and because we already have that function is shared enough, at least I could point somebody to that. I think there's one place in the supervisor code base if you want to install a package. I think that's where most of that logic is going through now. So you just call that, and it would block that like load process. And then when it's done, you've got stuff on disk. So when the supervisor does even what it's doing right now, it'll make sure it's installed, but it's already installed. So that takes basically no time.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not a bad tweak on things.
Okay. Well, accept the minor, and we'll get to that. That's really good feedback, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Load should not return status 1 when service is already loaded. So I actually responded to this a little bit ago. So I wrote the load command. So my feedback is that it's non-zero because this command accepts an argument which configures the service. What we don't want people to do is call loads with subsequent times and think that they are actually loading a new service. If you make subsequent calls and you do mean to override that, you can pass the force flag, which is basically unload and load. I think it's appropriate to keep it non-zero, but we can change it to not be like error 1. It could be error 2 instead, if that makes sense. And then, yeah, we can add a status or list command. How does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, that would kind of be my expectation, is if I already had something running and I try to load it again, especially if it's different, it should probably die and say like, I'm not going to do this for you. That's what the force flag is for. And worse, it was probably a mistake anyways to run it like. The only possible tweak might be if all my inputs were the same as what's running, is I could say, hey, that's already running, so there's no work to do. And that could exit 0, but it may not be worth all the code just to do that.
Yeah, I think having like a status command is something that we're going to need anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We're partially implementing systemd, and like it's
Well,
like
to do like config management convergent style stuff, we need a way to ask for what is the current state, and that would be a status or list anyways.
yeah.
So, like,
and so
that we're
like
gonna have to do.
the post-in script I was working on, like we call load a bunch of times for the different services we're going to load, and we do -- force. I mean, but it would be better to just like, instead of forcing load, just like checking to see if it's there and loading it if it's not. So if we could do that, then it would be, because when you do this, I mean, not only is the exit code wrong, but also like, or not wrong, but it is what it is. But also like it's going to restart the thing, and like if I just want it to be there,
Yeah.
and it's already there, I don't want to restart it for no reason.
Would somebody like to write a issue for a feature request on status or a list command?
Are you able to do that, Nathan? I
Yeah.
unless you're already writing one, I can do it as well, but
Yep, I will do that.
like I know the theoretical reason for it, but you have a driving use case, which I feel like that always trumps and is better.
Yeah, and I mean, I have like an implementation I'm trying to
Oh yeah.
reproduce. Justin, if you don't get the inside baseball, like I'm working on some of Chef's internal server products, like Chef Server, Automate, stuff like that, to get them working with Habitat. So like you have stuff like supermarket cuddle restart, right? Like the command you type to like restart the service that the thing's running. So we're kind of like replacing a lot of the run it service management with Habitat. So like, and here in Habitat, we're building a better run it for your future. So
That's what's gonna go on the shirt.
Awesome.
So
Dog fooding, it makes a lot of
I have
sense.
an idea of like what I want out of the future. So, but I'd love any other comments. So I'll post them in the channel when I get those tickets open.
Yeah. So, Fletcher, consensus here then, do we think is non-zero is fine? Should we return something other than 1, which is a failure, if it existed already? Or is 1 just fine?
Yeah, it kind of depends. Probably 1's okay. I mean, if you're wrapping this up in some kind of shell programming and you're going to be like, it's not 0, therefore it's probably not successful. I don't think we have too many places yet where we're using the number of the exit code to infer anything. Like I suppose we could, but that feels like that's a secret contract that we'll want to make sure works reasonably well. I mean, if there's anything we can do to help like output, that there's a problem and put that on standard error because it's like an error, then someone's likely to see it. So this might just be like we just need to provide some feedback, like the other feature that I can't remember who was writing up for the load. It's just kind of the same thing.
Okay. Do you want to close this one out for me, or write those comments? I would.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to pay attention and also answering back channel questions. Sorry, I invited Adam. He's who I was chatting to in the back. He's got some opinions about one of the issues that we closed.
Hello.
So, what issue number was that? That was.
And then let's just come up with some ads on that one.
Fuck.
You're talking about the environment one?
Yeah.
It's 2096.
All right.
All right, so here's the thing that you need to support. So then how we support it is up in the air. But the use case is you have like Heroku, right? Or Cloud Foundry, where you have some service that's running in the Habitat supervisor, and the only mechanism they give you really to alter those, not the only, but the common mechanism they give you to configure that is by injecting environment variables.
Yeah,
like, you know, if you go to Heroku and you're like, run through the thing, it's like, sure, man, configure your junk by jamming a bunch of stuff into this text box.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're running may very well have been pre-configured. So like you could be running a container, you could be running lots of stuff, but when you start that container up, you want that environment variable stuff to be honored, right? Because if you don't honor it, then there's no way for users of those platforms to run Habitat applications effectively. That's the use case you need to support. So then there's a second question, which is,
So it's the opening video. And
do those settings persist? Like, is that do you know what I mean? Like, which is different. Like, you know, if you were, and the answer there should be probably not, right? Because by definition, they were injected by some outside thing. And if you stopped injecting them, I think you'd want them to go away, right? Whereas like the user TOML stuff is very different. Like that's like you've explicitly said, I want this instance configured this way, not at runtime. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what command would you be running in Heroku or in one of those like Cloud Foundry to run the supervisor?
Like when you say like what exactly, like specifically?
Well, I don't think we've refactored the Docker export, but just think about the container use case as a good example.
Right.
So like,
so this is still honored that way.
Okay, because hab start eats it.
Absolutely.
And hab sup run eats it because it's honoring that in process, and that's the supervisor process. So we lucked out, or we're really smart. So that does still work.
Okay, because I think that's all that needs. To me, that's the part that needs to work.
The thing that
right.
builds the environment still honors it. And when I say builds the environment, I mean hab sup run or hab start the first time you call it, which by the way calls hab sup run.
Right.
That still honors all of this. And then any time you call load, what it's going to do is say, oh, whatever those environment variables that originally were set when you ran hab sup run are a thing that this service that you just loaded are now going to honor.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Cool.
So if you were to come in, so like just as a use case, so if you were to come in and you said, yo, I'm setting an environment variable for, you know, hab poopy pants, right?
Yep.
And when you started the container, no poopy pants was running. And then you loaded poopy pants. Poopy pants would honor that environment variable, even though that service wasn't running when it started.
That's right.
That feels right to me. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, this was either a great design or an accident, but that's.
And also, we should change all of our documentation. So like when we first started, we were like, look at how it's 12 factor, and then everybody was like, oh, the way I changed the config is the environment, and like it just makes you want to die.
Just like it could be 12 factor.
It should never.
That's one of an array of options.
Right.
Yeah, really, like pushing people to the user TOML is the right thing to do, like in every instance, right?
Well, or the ring, you know.
Yeah, or the ring. Either one's fine,
Yeah.
right? If I like, but the environment should be like the last thing. Like, it should be the thing you do because you have no choice and your platform made you do it.
Right.
But otherwise, there's better ways. Okay, I think we all agreed, and I just wasn't following along. So.
Oh, no problem. It's useful to make sure that we answer this the right way.
Think about
what will not happen is if you call load and you have an environment variable set when you call load.
It won't matter.
It will not matter.
Nope, because the environment gets set when the supervisor starts.
That's right.
And conveniently, if we're going to be in a lot more situations where we get into an environment with a started supervisor there, with a ring there already, like app config apply becomes a lot more useful, and needing a user toml becomes less useful because
Right.
whenever you get to the environment, no matter what, like you can configure it now right away.
Yes.
Except for you wait until your service is started.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Adam.
I mean, in that general vein, I would say there's probably also something to look at for the future, which is there probably needs to be a service that just says, here's the set of configuration that I want you to keep for these service groups active in the ring. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we've talked about that for a long time, and we're getting close to the part where we probably should build that thing.
Thanks so much, Aaron. We appreciate
That's
it.
just another microservice, right? You just run that in a service group, and it just
Yeah,
keeps festering the stuff around.
That's right. Like all it would really do is just watch a thing. Honestly, it could be packages because hey, when you have a hammer.
It's a good hammer.
Yeah, no, it's a super duper hammer. Like you just keep pooping out those packages, man.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Sorry for being disruptive.
No, you weren't at all, man. All right. Next one. Stopping and unloading services on Windows should kill child processes. Is this the thing that we want to fix? Yeah, nah. Is this the thing that we want to fix, Matt? Or
Yeah, I've been going through my my Windows examples and just catching things that seem weird. And this one's actually been around for a while. It's just like a pain in the butt, especially if running a demo, because with MySQL, you actually you either have to kill MySQL after stopping the service, or you have to kill you have to kill the supervisor in a special way on Windows, explicitly telling to kill all child processes, which a user shouldn't have to worry themselves about. So I want to look into like why is that happening with some services and not with others?
Mhm.
Like other services, it kills them just fine. So I've even looked into it, but that should work.
all right. So accepted minor.
I'm surprised this actually came up because it's on the. I put it on our board and I assigned myself to it. There's probably something missing in our
Yeah, it's because it's on my query. I don't have the project one.
Ah, right.
So I should say like no project. Yeah.
Yeah, so we shouldn't have to do anything. It should do it. It should just. I have it in analysis right now.
Yeah. All right. If I'm running a machine on a supervisor, I want an easy way to make it so the supervisor will start when I reboot machine. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Leave. This is the thing that we would definitely merge. But I don't think this is the thing that is on our critical path right now.
Yeah, put it on help wanted because I basically have this like in my post-int script as a shell script right now for systemd.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can probably extract it out of there, and because I'm going to need it to work on Upstart or whatever, also. So I'll just like refine that code until it's good enough to pull out into something, and then get somebody to help me with Rust.
Yeah. We got to come up with a snazzy name for this. I've been rallying for infest. We should definitely not use that.
Nice.
It's awful.
It's
Yeah.
awful.
I've been using the term parasite to describe habitat, which is actually wrong.
Yeah, we should
So
stop.
in the sense of like habitat and its packages kind of infect a system, but they don't. It's more like the symbiotic relationship. So you're like habitat's a symbiont.
Yeah, so habitat symbiote is what we're gonna call this thing.
Can we have venom and have carnage?
Yeah,
Have midichlorians.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. This is definitely something that we would completely merge in. So
Would that mean that the operating system would have been Jedi'd once habitat's running on it?
That's a good question. I kind of like it. And where does the dark side come in? Ah.
The hab is strong on this container.
yeah, we're still trying to figure out too what we call people that use habitat.
I like habitats personally.
No, that's that viral shit that's happening right now. You gotta inhabitants is the right. I think it's the right one. All right, that's all the issues. You guys have anything you want to chat about? All right. If nothing, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining,
everyone.
guys.
Sweet.
See ya.